Hi, this is Jim Fitzgerald. I'm a large and ultra-large format camera builder and photographer and carbon transfer printer. I build cameras and shoot large film, and I'm a traditional photographer and printer. So this is one of my finished carbon prints. Well, here it is, loose and available for sale if anybody's interested. So anyhow, with that said, I'll go through some of the processes and show you how to do carbon transfer printing. Carbon transfer printing is pretty unique. You can buy manufactured materials, or you can create your own. I prefer to create my own because it gives me my own unique tone and character to my images. One of the processes, or I shouldn't say processes, but the items you need to make is a product called tissue. And this just happens to be a piece of fixed out x-ray film that I use as a substrate. And so what I do is I take, how you make tissue is I take a 250 bloom gelatin and basically make jello. What I do is I'll put about 700 to 800 milliliters of very cold distilled water into this beaker, and I mix in 100 grams of the 250 bloom gelatin, and I let it sit for about an hour, and it blooms and gets hard. Then I take it and I put it in a water bath, and I remelt it, so I reliquefy it. After about another hour has gone by and it's liquefied, I take just regular, this is just regular sugar, and I put in a measured amount of sugar. Depending on some working parameters, it'll vary by your location how much sugar you put in. And again, I use this for my process, and other workers do things differently, so this is just me. I put in the sugar, and then I put in a measured amount of pigment. There's several pigments that you can use. I use Black Cat India ink. It's a nice warm black. You can use powdered pigments. You can use tube watercolor pigments. You can mix and match. You can use any number of pigments and pigment types. The amount of pigment that you put in will control the contrast of your final image. So it's something that's very important and something you'll learn about as you print more and more. And then you pour it onto the substrate, and we'll cover that here shortly. Okay, here's how I make my tissue. What I've done is I've taken a piece of fixed out x-ray film. It's in a tray of cold water, and I brought it in here to this metal tray that's been table that's been leveled as best as possible. This is for demonstration purposes. So anyhow, what I do is I squeegee off the excess water, wipe it up, get it out of the way, and take a towel. Make sure you wipe off any excess water that's on the surface. Get it as dry as you can. Make sure there's no lint on there, so I use a really fine towel. And then I frame it in with this metallic strip you can get from Home Depot, Lowe's, any of those stores, hardware stores will probably carry this stuff. It's about a ½ inch wide, I don't know, maybe 1.5 millimeters thick. I'm no scientist. I just look at it and say that looks good. So I've never measured this stuff, but I think according to all the calculations it's about 1 millimeter to 1.5 millimeters thick. So I just frame in the 10 by 12 sheet, and then I pour my my pigmented material, which is now called GLOP. That's what carbon printers call their working materials, is GLOP, and then this will become tissue. Okay, I've got my measured amount of GLOP here, and my tissue substrate's been framed in. It's the x-ray film, and what I do is I just start kind of towards a corner, and I gently pour, and watch how the gelatin flows. I've tried to level this as best as possible, but sometimes things beyond your control happen and you can't get it perfectly level. So what you do is you just gently pour it, watch it flow, and make adjustments. And it's, say, not moving where you want it to. You just take your finger and you move it along. But anyhow, that's pouring tissue. Now that the tissue's dried sufficiently, I'm going to take a razor blade here, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take it and trim around the inside edge of the frame. Trim it right down along the sides, and you pull it off, and you can see the height of the tissue when you do that. It's pretty thick. I pour a pretty thick tissue, Makes it pretty strong, pretty hard, and great to work with, I feel. But then after I do that, you can see it's kind of framed in here, and I'll take a piece of cardboard, and what I do is I'll just kind of grab an edge here and slide the cardboard underneath, pick it up, put it right on the cardboard, and now what I'll do is I'll just pin it to the cardboard. Some regular pins, nothing special. And I hang it up to dry. It dries for about 2 to 3 days, depending on humidity. I live by the beach, so the humidity is quite high. So it generally takes about at least 2 days, if not maybe 3, for it to dry completely. And then I can sensitize it and expose the tissue. So that's tissue making. That's the most important part, I feel, to the process, or probably the most important part, because it gives you the image tone. Okay, here we are in the dark. Actually, it's a yellow bug light. I've pinned a finished and dried tissue. So what I'm going to do is sensitize this tissue, and what I have here in this bottle is a 1.5% solution of ammonium dichromate. It's mixed with water, and I brush sensitize. So I'm putting in a measured amount. I just mix it up, and what you do is you brush on half and half. This is a foam brush I've wetted, so it's got some moisture to it. I pour it right in the middle of the tissue, and then I lightly brush it back and forth, and try to do it lightly so you don't generate a whole lot of marks and streaks and everything. And it dries quickly, and there you go. You've got the tissue sensitized. Now I'm going to let it dry. Always wear gloves, because this ammonium dichromate is, it can be toxic, but like anything in a photographic processes, alternative processes, you just have to take the precautionary steps to do things properly. Okay, well, it looks like the tissue's dry, so it's time to expose it. What I'm going to do, I put this little sheet down so it doesn't burn through the new arc unit. I use a 26 1KS 1000-watt plate burner to expose my images. So this is a sheet of like a little mylar that I put a safe edge around it, the image, and what the purpose is for very long exposures, and if you have too much heat buildup, you can end up with the negative sticking to the tissue, and you ruin the negative. Now this is a sheet of X-ray film that I'm going to print this image. I've notched it so I know which side's the emulsion side, but it's emulsion on both sides, so it really doesn't matter which side you print from. But what I do is emulsion to emulsion here, basically, and I'm going to center this as best I can inside the safe edge, and the safe edge will eliminate any frilling along the edges after you transfer the image. So placing it in the New Arc plate burner, and I've already figured my exposure out, and so I'm going to turn this on. It's going to get a little noisy, so we'll set the time for 225 units, and now I'll turn on the vacuum frame. This is going to get even louder as it sucks out all of the air, creates a vacuum, holds everything in registration. So now when I start it, it's going to get really bright. It's 1000 watts, so here it comes. And it generally just starts, and there you go, the exposure's starting. Piece of cake. Okay, well, this is my final support paper, which this happens to be a sheet of semi-gloss fiber paper. It's been fixed out. Standard fixer, hardening, non-hardening fixer, doesn't really matter. Just fix it out, dry it. This is a tray, cold water. It's probably 45 degrees. As long as you keep it under about 68, 70 degrees, the transfers are going to go fine. So the exposure is done. So what I'm going to do is take the negative off. What's happened is this image has been transferred via the UV light into the tissue. So now I have the negative has been exposed into my temporary support medium, my tissue. This is going to give me my final image right here. All that this fixed out photo paper is just my final support medium. So what I do is I come over and I immerse this tissue completely underwater. I just slide it under there nice and smooth. So you just hold it down here under the water, and I'm going to estimate about 30-35 seconds. And here in just a few seconds I'll flip it over. I've got both emulsions facing up. And this flip is just a nice smooth turn, and you don't want to create a lot of bubbles. You just get it down, and then I just take my hands and kind of slowly walk it up to the other end, and I grab it and kind of snap it out of the water. Once I do that, I just take it over here to my transfer table where I have a squeegee, and I just lightly squeegee across, and then I progressively get harder and harder when I squeegee it. And I'm always holding it so that it doesn't move. If it moves, it'll ruin the image. So I squeegee off all the excess water as much as I can, and that way I've got a good bond. Take a piece of just paper towel, and the purpose of this is you want to push on the edge and help to eliminate any moisture that might be stuck on the edge. And if you don't, it can cause the edge to release during development. Then what I do is I put a piece of just old newspaper on it, and I grab a sheet of glass. The extra sheet of glass that I have here, there's glass down here by the way on this table. And then I'll take a weight, just because I've used this bottle, it's full of water, put a gallon on it. I go out and wait for 30 minutes, and then we'll come back and develop the image and see what we get. Okay, here we are. This is the development stage. So I've taken the image out, transferred it. Now I've got a tray of about 105 degree water here, and what I'm going to do, you can see how everything's kind of sandwiched together. So here's the final support medium with the emulsion side up, and here's my tissue with the image on it, emulsion side down. So what you do, just immerse it in the water. I let it sit there and soak for about a minute, and after about a minute's time, what I'm going to do is I'll get in here and I like to help speed it up a little bit. I found that it works really well if you just kind of go around the edge and lightly lift the edge up, and that allows the hot water to get in there a little bit more rapidly. And you'll see it along the edges. You see where it starts to melt. You can see the gelatin starting to melt along the edge. When you push along the edge, you can see it kind of floating out there. And yeah, you see it. It just takes a while. So it looks like it's down pretty well. It feels pretty good. So I just go over to the middle and I hold the paper down, and I find a nice middle point, and I slowly, keeping the tissue underwater as much as possible, I just slowly start to peel it back. So this you only peel just the amount of restriction and resistance that you get. You peel as fast as the resistance. Okay, so we're at the end, and so here's my tissue, and I'll just lay that down there. And now what I do is I'm leaning here and I'm shaking the tissue, and what this does is this helps to release the gelatin. Okay, we're about maybe 10 minutes in, 12 minutes in, and I've changed the water one time, and you can see there's still a little bit of pigment that's being released. And you could stop the development if you want to keep the image a little darker, but it's always best to try to give it full development. But there it is from start to finish. So that's the final print. I'm going to go stick it in the cold water bath, and that's it for developing. Okay, so that kind of wraps things up. So thanks for watching. Carbon transfer printing for me is absolutely the way I see to present my work. It's my passion. I absolutely love it. I can't see printing any other way. I teach workshops. You can contact me through www.carbonartphotography.com. I have work that's going to be presented in a solo show at the Buenaventura Gallery here in Ventura. That's July 21st from 4 to 7. It's during the City of Ventura's Art Walk. And come on by and say hi, and have a glass of wine, and we can talk about carbon printing, and hopefully you might see something you like and you take it home with you. Love to sell some artwork. So thanks again. I really enjoyed doing this.